Hello and welcome to Jim and Ben's Movie Adventures. My name is Ben and with me is...
Edward Dalton, vampire, hematologist, and freedom fighter.
Don't forget Self-Loather as well.
Yeah, gotta have a bit of that. Because this week we watched Daybreakers, which was a Jim pick from 2009, and it's one of those films that I really have a soft spot for. So before we get into it, why don't you tell us a bit about the production? I'll give us a synopsis, and away we go. Except reverse that, because we always do it the other way around. So why don't I do the synopsis, and then you can tell us about the production. Okay, here we go.
Ready? I was ready to go. I was just going to go.
I'm just saying. I caught myself. I fixed it. Here we go. In the near future, the vast majority of humanity have been turned into immortal vampires caused by an infected vampire bat outbreak. More of a pandemic than a supernatural occurrence, the vampire community relies on the dwindling human blood supply to survive. However, the humans are dwindling in number, and the immortal vampires are starting to starve as their society breaks down. 35-year-old vampire Edward Dalton, played by Ethan Hawke, is a hematologist working on a synthetic blood substitute to relieve the shortages. But his employer, Charles Bromley, played by Sam Neill, only wants the blood substitute as part of a broader plan that still involves killing humans. When Edward is found by human survivors Audrey Bennett and Lionel Cormack, his focus shifts from finding a blood substitute to instead trying to create a cure for vampirism altogether, all while staying one step ahead of the manipulative Bromley. The end.
The end. Released 2009, directed by the Spearig Brothers, screenplay Spearig Brothers, starring Ethan Hawke, Willem Dafoe, Claudia Kavanagh, Michael Dorman, Sam Neill, Vince Colosimo, and Isabel Lucas. Music by Christopher Gordon. Runtime of 98 minutes. Budget of 20 mil. Box office of 30 mil domestic, 21 mil international, and $51,416,464 worldwide.
That was a very specific number there.
I like to try and do the whole for the worldwide. This movie, I had seen it before. I'm pretty sure you'd showed it to me before. It's a very good movie. And it's a good movie for a few things. And it's a good movie despite some of its glaring holes. And I think it's a good movie in a way. And I think this must be like a vampire movie thing, right? But a vampire movie needs to pick a visual style. And this movie has a visual style, a very distinct visual language. And I think it handles itself really well. It also has a nice twist on the vampire motif, and how it kind of all begins and all that sort of stuff. And the acting is really good. I mean, the idea that a film like this can get Willem Dafoe and Ethan Hawke is wildly crazy to me. The idea that this isn't somehow just an all-Australian cast is almost bamboozling. But tell us, why did you pick it?
I like this movie. You're kind of circling at some of the reasons that I like this movie. I like it for two distinct reasons. And one is about its production, all behind the scenes stuff, linking to what we see on screen. And then the second is about some of the storytelling choices that they make. Okay. And the movie's not perfect, and we'll definitely get to that. But first of all, if we sort of look at the production side of things that interests me, this movie was shot for $20 million, and it was shot in between Brisbane, Australia, and the Gold Coast, Australia. And $20 million, you got a lot for your money in this particular film, like in terms of visual style, in terms of the cast you got, in terms of the effects, right? You really did get a lot for your $20 million. And I love that it really walks that line between feeling high production and also feeling really low tech and homemade. Like the Spearig Brothers did some of the visual effects themselves, literally them in Photoshop on their computer, manipulating things, Photoshop and After Effects, I should say, like for some of the shots, because that's sort of where they come from, that school of independent filmmaking, DIY. And there's some things, and they're very clever about, like, well, hey, we can save money because we can do those easier things. And then obviously where we have to pay people, we will, but you don't usually do that at this price point. You know what I mean? Like it's sort of
I
the
do want to make a small correction. Screen Australia did give them $1 million, so it was actually $21 million.
and the other thing is, like, Australia as a shooting location isn't spectacularly cheap. Do you know what I mean? Like
It's really not.
yeah, it's not like we're over in, Hungary or somewhere like that where it's known to be cheap all the time. So and then the other thing about that I really like is this reminds me of the Sergio Leone spaghetti westerns, in the way that this is clearly supposed to be for an American audience. The characters are doing American accents. Some of them are American. The big stars, the nondescript sci-fi-ish city that they're in is clearly supposed to be an American city. And yet we've shot it in Australia and we've used a 98% Aussie production cast and crew. Obviously, it's really just Willem Dafoe and Ethan Hawke who are Americans. Yeah. Everybody else around them is Aussie. So, and that's kind of like what they were doing in those spaghetti westerns. They had this Italian crew and cast, and then they were trying to make this thing that appealed to American audiences and sort of, did that. And I love that idea. I wish we saw more of that kind of local flavor blended with the American sensibility that everybody enjoys on the Hollywood scale.
The kids these days would call it LARPing. It was LARPing as an American film. And you're very much right. It was, and not in a cynical way, right? They were definitely trying to make a certain film. And they just happened to be making that film in Australia with Australian talent majority-wise. So I'm not saying like they were cash grabbing or anything like that. They had a very specific story they were telling. It just happened to work best in that American situation of big corporations.
I just call it smart. It's how you're going to get your finance. It's how you're going to get your distribution. It's what audiences expect. The chance of it being a bit bigger than something that had the completely local flavor. I don't have a problem with it at all. I think it was really savvy filmmaking in that sense.
Yeah. It's. I want to quickly talk about lore, Lore. Vampire lore is something that chops and changes depending on what its fiction needs. And that is no more evident in something like Twilight, for example. Like, hey, I need it to do a certain thing, so this, but I want vampires. This movie does that as well. And it does that as well as, it was almost premonition in that it was a virus that swept the world from like a bat, right? And infected people and things like that. But the vampire-ness of this is a bit flip-floppy in parts. Certain things of like, well, they can take an absolute beating, they need to drink blood, but they can drink other blood. It very much was used for its metaphor a lot more than it was used for its pure vampireness until you got to what are the mutated vampires called?
The subsiders.
Until you get to like the subsiders and they go a bit harder on the mythology. I was just wondering, what were your thoughts on the use of vampirism in this film to tell this story? And what is your opinion on the vampires seem to me to be actually fairly stupid, except for Ethan Hawke's character. You would say, well, actually, the modern world's playing out and showing that short-sightedness is human as well as vampiric. But like the vampires in this movie seem so short-sighted.
Yeah, I guess, well, that actually really brings me to, I said that the production behind the scenes was one thing that I really loved and enjoyed about the movie. And the second thing that I really love is the world that they made. Yeah. And in terms of the lore, I don't really mind the lore sort of mucking around a little bit with what it's doing, because I do think it serves this particular world. What they were interested in is something that we don't really see in vampire fiction very much, which is, well, what if we flip it and everyone's a vampire? Because that is what is going to happen eventually. If you take the fact that vampires are immortal and that they actually, turn people and make more immortals, eventually you are going to have more vampires than humans because they don't die easily, and therefore you will have a shortage. So I think that's a really clever place to start your movie, in that sort of end game. And I really, and you can tell as well that the Spierig brothers, as writer directors, they're super fascinated in what that does to society. There are
Yeah.
so many things throughout the film, like things on news, on the news screens, adverts for the sub walk, which is where they sort of have tunnels underground that they can walk during the day. The idea of like the cars have all been modded so that they can drive during the day, and they love all that stuff. And I do too. That's the stuff that I think makes it fun, is what does the world look like, if everyone's a vampire? So, and in terms of, are the humans short-sighted? Well, they are, but also I think that that is a weirdly human thing. If you were
Yeah.
to say to you, Ben, tomorrow, hey, you can be immortal, are you going to stop and think about the larger global society and the problems that that leads to? Or are you just going to be like, immortal? Me? Sweet. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, so I do sort of think that that's a pretty human reaction to be like, we'll deal with it later. Do you know what I mean? Like, because on the macro, on the individual, everyone wants to live forever, right? So therefore you can see how we end up that way, So, and then of course you end up in this situation where now we've got the shortage and no one really knows what to do. And that kind of makes sense too, as well, because it's like, well, what do we do? Like,
Um, Yeah, it's crazy. And I also want to talk about like the different views held within that society. Like Ethan Hawke's is shown as a minority view. Like he got turned, he didn't really want to be turned. He doesn't like the idea of harvesting humans. So there's very much like almost like a vegan message running in this film. And I don't know if whether the Spirit Brothers are vegan or not, but it's very much like, hey, like we shouldn't be killing animals, we shouldn't be killing humans just to sustain ourselves. We need to find an alternative. And then you've got characters like Sam Neill, who is purely driven by greed and that kind of that pure human emotion of wanting to live forever because he was sick beforehand. And then you've got like kind of I'm not going to say in between character because he definitely leans more Sam Neill, but Vince Colosimo's character, right? It's that kind of like wanting to maintain the status quo, wanting to gain power for themselves, but not really ethically caring about what way that goes, until he very clearly cares about a certain way. It's interesting that they kind of show all those kind of points of view, and I found it very interesting to watch that through a modern lens of where our society is currently at and what we're currently dealing with politically and socially and economically. And I think it's so strange that we think we're in a unique time in history, right? And film shows us time and time again we're not. The veneer might be different, like how it looks might be different, but the underlying mechanisms of corporations and corporate greed and society clashing against each other are always there. They're a classic story, and history is showing us that it repeats time and time again. So yeah, it just, I don't know, I started rambling because this movie makes me think about so many things.
Yeah, and I also sort of looking at that, I think it is really interesting again when you take the idea that if everyone's a vampire, moral decline starts very quickly, in human society, because again, it's that idea that like, well, we live forever, right? So people who are more concerned about like it really inherently turns characters towards thinking about themselves more rather than the whole, right? There's not much sense of legacy, what we're leaving behind, what we're leaving for our children. It's like, what do I have now? Like, now that's a pretty pessimistic view of society, but that is what this film starts to sort of present, with the idea that everybody has made this, even just the idea that once they realize, oh, I can live forever, all I have to do is kill other people often and drink their blood. That is a choice that people make. And they make it quickly, and they quickly change their ethics and morals to suit that new reality that they're in. And that is all really interesting stuff. But I would say that's all background stuff to this movie, right? All of that interesting tapestry that we're talking about and that is causing you to have a think and causing me to go, wow, what a world, what an interesting conundrum. That's all background stuff, which kind of leads me to, well, there's a plot on top of this movie too.
Before we get to the plot, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
you've just triggered something in my brain. There's a really interesting way they actually show that selfishness and that lack of care, and it's visually. And I didn't notice it till about halfway through the movie, and then I went back and checked, and it's there through the whole movie. Do you know what 99% of the vampire characters do in this film that have nothing to do with anything else? They smoke.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah.
They smoke, and you think, why? Because it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, yeah.
They can't get sick from it. They can't die from it. They can't hurt anyone else with it. They can just enjoy smoking because, drug, nicotine, make brain go light up, make good addiction, all that sort of stuff. And you can see that, like, the kids are smoking, the adults are smoking, every echelon of society is smoking, and they don't even think about it. And you think, that's such a weird, but probably really true consequence of a world like this.
Yeah.
Like, why not? But yes, there's a plot in this movie.
And that's sort of where, I don't want to say it comes undone, because it doesn't. The plot hangs together. It works, right? We're talking about finding a substitute. We've got some human resistance. It pivots to trying to find a cure. We find the cure. We got to take the cure back to the evil corporation. Even the brother character played by Michael Dorman, you sort of think, oh, well, he's a side character, but everything's motivated, right? He becomes pivotal in creating the cure. He becomes, and then Isabel Lucas's character, who's Sam Neill's daughter, is really important so that Michael Dorman's character can have his realization that things aren't, and he has his sort of, it all is motivated. It all makes sense. It's just kind of conventional, it's just kind of conventional, and it's not particularly gripping when you look at this world that we've just spent so much time diving into and saying, how interesting is this, right? Because that's all background tapestry to what is actually happening on screen, which is this fairly conventional kind of adventure-y sort of plot where we go from A to B, we got to get this, we got to do that, So is it bad? No, it's just perhaps not as interesting as maybe it could have been. And that's sort of where, the movie, it's the least interesting part of the film to me.
The movie even hints at some of the more interesting things it could have done, where there is a character that is a vampire politician, right? And the idea that, because the authority we're shown in this world is a corporation. It's like Sam Neill's company, right? And it's the corporation that gives the blood to everybody. And it's a corporation who's looking to make the synthetic. And they're not looking to make the synthetic to make the world a better place. They're looking to make the synthetic to make money and can keep the status quo going. But, like, there's the idea of, like, a vampire that is a politician who is willing to work with humans for their goal. Like, there's interesting things in the background here. I also want to talk about the cure they come up with in this film. And don't get me wrong, this would have been one of the hardest parts to solve in this film. Because you're like, well, we've created a vampirism that is scientific in style, right? We're trying to show that it has biological mechanisms. We're trying to show this. So they're getting rid of, like, the magic part of being a vampire, which they don't do completely. For example, like, no. they still do the whole, they can't be seen in mirrors and reflections and things. I'm like, well, that's the magic part of being a vampire. That doesn't make sense. But anyway, but the cure is, simply put, that they find the first part of the cure they find is, hey, you have to basically go into the sun, catch on fire, get put out real quick, and basically be resuscitated, like brought back to life. And that cures your vampirism.
That's part one.
That's part one. Even the hematologist is like, well, or maybe the blood just needs to be treated in the body, not out of the body.
Yeah.
Whatever. So that is like, and then we find out, hey guys, we actually don't need to go through that. We just need to give them the blood of somebody who's been cured. And then that creates a really interesting finale. But lore-wise and story-wise, you're like, oh, they must have struggled with this. Or they didn't struggle with it, they just went with their first idea.
No, it would have been hard because, the more logical way to go from a story point of view is to say that it is discovered, and it could be discovered in this film even, that, 0.01% of all humanity is actually immune. And if vampires feed on them, they go backwards and get cured back to human. The problem with that, while that hangs together a lot more than, hey, light yourself on fire, then put yourself out, and then hope it's hot enough to do the whatever. Like, you know what I mean? While that hangs together better, it doesn't give Ethan Hawke's character anything to do. So that's where it's a bit like...
No, it does. Like, if he got his hands on one of those people and was studying their blood and realized a way to give it to others, like, there was something you could do there, but you're right.
Right. In the shape of their story, though, they would have had to make a lot of changes to make that work. So I could sort of see that this is trying to give their main character some agency and some involvement in being influential to have this happen. Also, he's going through it himself, all this sort of stuff. But yes, it's more than a little silly, right? To have it sort of happen this way. So, we got this sort of conventional plot on top, and then we've got this more interesting world. Obviously, I'm interested in the production. I'm interested in the world. One thing that caught me by surprise, it has been many years since I've seen this film.
Yeah,
this film is substantially gorier than I recall. Like, this movie, I was like, whoa! Like, at several points, I was like, they are just going for it. I'm a little bit queasy. This is far gorier than I would usually partake in, I suppose. So how did you find that aspect?
Well, I forget what the movie we watched previously was where we spoke about this. And we spoke about how gore and things can be a substitute for lack of other things in a film because they're trying to get an audience, right? I actually don't think that's what is happening in this film. I think it's very deliberate. I think it's very measured, and it's part of telling the story they want. But what I think it is them just trying to get the
Mutant
most...
Chronicles.
We talked about it in
Mutant Chronicles.
Mutant Chronicles. It's very different to Mutant Chronicles. Mutant Chronicles only had that. This doesn't only have the gore. But I think it is a side effect of their lower budget. So they weren't able to show many supernatural aspects of being a vampire, right? The extreme strength and all the other bits and pieces that go with it, they do show it a little bit, but they don't show a lot of it. But they can show blood effects because that can be very practical, which it is very practical in this movie most of the time. And they can show fire, which can be done very practical as well. So I think part of that is kind of writing to their budget, which when you go to university or film school or read any book on making your own movies, the first thing they say is write to your resources. And I think that's a little bit of what we've got here. They've gone, well, we can do this. We can make it look good. It serves our plot at a lot of places. And the underlying theme of our movie is blood. Like, whether it's blood is the cure, how do we make fake, like everything is blood, which is what vampires are about. It is super gory, and they don't shy away from that, and it's definitely part of the visual style they're telling. But yeah, it is there for sure, very much so. Like, but just so much as the two lighting styles in this movie, right? When we're doing vampire scenes and we're doing human scenes, they're so distinctly different and jarring. Like, human scenes are all warm. Like, there's natural light used a lot of the time.
Golden.
Even when you're inside, there's sun rays coming through windows. Like, whereas vampires is the word blue? I don't know. It's like
they haven't gone full underworld into the pure
No.
blue, but they've definitely hit what they call the teal look, where it's
Yeah.
basically blue with a tinge of green to it, and they've stuck with that for their sort of vampire tech world, you know?
So yeah, it's definitely all part of the visual style of this film. And whereas in Mutant Chronicles, the blood and the gore was a detraction, it was a sideshow, the only part of it that was probably pulling some people in. This is part of the tapestry. If it's not your thing, it's not your thing, but it's part of a wider, better product.
It's true. And look, it's funny because I picked the film, but it's not my thing. I don't like gore. But the world of this particular story, and that we've talked so much about, the production behind the scenes of it is enough to keep me sort of invested in this one, even though I sort of go, well, that's actually too much for me. I don't need to see that. I don't need to see the entrails and the blood spurting from the neck. Like, I'm not about that.
Especially the finale of this movie is where
the
it
finale
really
goes
kicks
hard.
off.
Like it goes crazy. And again, that's where I look at it and go, oh, that's far too stomach churning gory for me. But also I go, well done on your budget. Like, because there's that, when they're in that lobby and they've got just slow-mo packed with 30 people and there's blood and vampires and craziness happening everywhere. I'm like, that's impressive on a $20 million budget. Like, it's impressive and disturbing and stomach churning and all those things. But like,
what do they say? It's all on the screen. Like, you don't think that money disappeared somewhere else. It probably was there to pay Willem Dafoe, Ethan Hawke, and then put everything else on the screen.
And there are also some really clever production choices in the movie as well that I do think deserve some attention, in the sense that, okay, how do you make this cold alternate reality vampire world on the cheap and have it be a little bit sci-fi-ish? Well, they solved it by basically making these really unique vertical light columns that in all the exteriors, there's about 20 light poles that are just these vertical light columns, and they just move them around, and they both serve to light the set and give a stylistic aesthetic to these nighttime scenes, and makes it look corporate and makes it look, cool in both senses of the word, both color palette and, stylistically, and also done for cheap, like you say, it's literally on the screen. The lights that they are using in production are on the screen as part of the visual world as well. So smart storytelling, smart production work. And I must say, I was kind of hoping that when this movie came out in 2009, I was like, are we going to see like a string of these? Is it going to kind of kick off local industry for genre pictures and that kind of thing? Because it kind of proved that it could. And then just nothing. It was isolated. It was just this movie, and that was it. So I was like,
it didn't even really kick off things for the Spearig brothers.
No.
Like they kind of haven't done much since, and they've proved they can do good stuff. Like,
well, I feel like they're still grinding and working. They've actually got, and this will date us, but that's okay. So they've got the sequel to that movie, Fall. They're doing the sequel to that. They did a movie with Helen Mirren called Winchester. Like they've done stuff. It's just it's not like nuclear, automatic, meteoric. Like you get the sense that they're still grinding. Actually, I think a movie that is excellent that we absolutely will watch. Have you ever seen Predestination?
It doesn't ring a bell.
It's a Spearig Brothers movie, also shot in Australia. Sarah Snook, it's excellent. We must watch it at some point. And that's one that is just fantastic. But the only thing I want to say, I've just sort of praised the production and hiding the seams and all of that sort of thing. There's one thing they just don't get away with. And that's that the Australian bush looks nothing like an American exterior setting. Nothing like it,
I had a moment where I'm like, I've climbed that tree.
It's like, just like they do their best. They really do. But as soon
even
as
the
you are,
roads, right? You look at the
yeah,
roads and you're like, yes, they've obviously done them up and driven them in the way that Americans drive them, but I'm just like, it just looks like a road in Brisbane.
yeah.
Uh, like,
Like you get away with it at night in the
yeah.
sci-fi tech vampire world, but as soon as you are in the midday sun, in with cattle fields and the trees, like you just don't get away with it at all. There's no way we're anything close to an American landscape there.
I also want to say, yeah, Brisbane's not a big place, but every film doesn't have to use the same 3 buildings.
Well,
This is also going to date us, but you've already done it. I want to talk about Sam Neill. Sam Neill, I can't think of another villain he's played in a film. He's played some morally ambiguous.
He's villainous on TV. He's been villainous in the Peaky Blinders show, but yeah, but he doesn't do a lot of villains on screen,
And
or he didn't, I should say.
No, and I kind of really enjoyed watching that side of him in this film. And anything that kind of wasn't, super encapsulating wasn't him. It was maybe a bit of story. It was maybe a bit of a scripting or something like that. And it was really nice to see him in that kind of really polished, really kind of corporate, kind of greed, kind of villain role. And the dating part of this is he had kind of passed away recently in real life. And I love that our tribute to him is probably one of his least watched films in Daybreakers, because it is still a fantastic performance and it is still classic Sam Neill on screen. And what I mean by that is he had a charisma and a likability, no matter the role he was playing, that always played well into his characters. Whether he was a grumpy archaeologist, or whether he was a corporate vampire, or anything in between, or whether he was a grumpy New Zealander with a boy in the bush. He kind of always had that charm, and that charm is in this movie as well. And I just wanted to mention, I think it's cool that we got to watch a Sam Neill movie when we watched it.
Yeah, and that was a little bit deliberate. Like the news had just broken when it was my turn to pick, and I went, that is a good performance by him, and I'd like to see him in that again. So here we are. But look, for all the good, all the bad, all the vampirism, all the other stuff, that is Daybreakers. So if you haven't seen it, I think you should. I think it's worth a watch, if you don't mind the gore that is just dialed up a little bit further than I personally like.
But if you're into even genre films that are a little bit more off-center, aren't really in the mainstream, definitely check it out. If you do want to check out everything we've done, you can do so in a couple of places like YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes. For YouTube, Jim and Ben's Movie Adventures. For iTunes, it's the same. And for Spotify, it's the same. Once you find us, if you like what we do, follow, like, subscribe. We really do appreciate it. We're releasing these all the time, and we've got a really good back catalogue now. So if you think, hey, maybe they've watched this movie, there's a chance we have. Check it out. If you do find the movie you love, leave a comment on it and say, I'm so glad you've watched this movie. Maybe you should watch this movie. And maybe we'll get to it, and maybe we'll go with it. If you want to follow us on any sort of social media, you can do so. Jim_and_Ben for Instagram, and Jim and Ben's Movie Adventures for TikTok. Now, it is my turn to choose. And after watching this film, I found it really hard to pull myself out of the vampire mindset. And I'm pretty sure I know you've seen this movie, and I do apologize because it is also gory. But you opened the door.
Hey, so you started all this with K-pop Demon Hunters, man.
So this is another kind of, I think it's probably more known than the movie we watched here, but it's not thought of as like a genre classic, for example. But it's also another twist on vampires, or another way to look at vampires. We're going to watch the Josh Hartnett vehicle, 30 Days of Night.
I've never seen this movie.
You've never seen it? Okay.
I've never seen this movie.
That's even more exciting to me. So for those of you who don't know, 30 Days of Night is a vampire film set in a town in Alaska.
Isn't this David Slade?
It is David Slade.
This is going to scare me. I'm going to be genuinely scared.
So
in this movie.
there are some scary moments, but it's actiony as well and horror.
That's why I haven't seen it. You know, because I was like, this is actually going to scare me. I'm going to be afraid.
But look,
quivering
if you're afraid,
in my 40-year-old boots. Okay.
So we're going to watch 30 Days of Night next week. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining Jim and Ben's Movie Adventures. We hope you enjoyed the adventure.
Just a quick note from Jim here as an edit to the end of that last podcast. Ben did decide to change his pick from 30 Days of Night to, wait for it, Angels in the Outfield. So if you want to know why, make sure you listen to our now Angels in the Outfield next episode. Thanks, everyone. Bye.